Yay, baseball! How's everybody doing today? Good, very good. Everybody have a pretty good week? We'll do one clap, 1, 2, 3 clap for a good week. 1, 2, 3 clap. All right, not bad, very good. It's all right, good stuff. All right, well, thank you so much for being here today. It's an amazing day to be here, and thank you so much for choosing this place over so many other places you could be. Today we're going to go through one of the other minor prophets. We've been going through this series, Minor Prophets, just to help people that we understand people have travel plans, they're kind of in and out and stuff. So this way you don't have to worry about kind of keeping track and worrying about, what did they talk about last week, and kind of catching up. So each one of these is their individual fun little kind of nugget of truth and really, really fun stuff. First off, you'll have to forgive me. I'm getting over a cold, so if I cough or sniffle or anything like that, that's if. And if you don't forgive me, I'm telling Jesus. So that's that. So we'll jump into it. This week we're doing Nahum, Nahum or Nahum, depending on how you pronounce it. It's an interesting book. It takes place right around 650 BC, so 650 years before Christ. This is an interesting time for two kingdoms. I wonder if you guys remember. What are the two kingdoms that we're talking about? Israel and Judah, all right? Israel and Judah. So this is a kind of a story about what's going on in Israel, which is the northern kind of tribe that they're going through. And so the Assyrians, foreign kind of power, came in and conquered Israel. They took over. They started putting people of their kind of heritage and stuff into power. And something that was really interesting about this, the way that they did it, is that there's like the usual kind of conquer and come in and kind of take power form or kind of outline. Like you come in, you establish your military power, you say you have to pay us taxes and stuff like that, or you can leave or stuff like that. These guys were particularly not nice. When they came in, they actually found the leader of each town or each kind of city or state or county or kind of that gathering, and they would actually torture them and do all kinds of terrible stuff and then execute them publicly. They stole a lot more in taxes and goods and things like that than normal kind of conquerors would. Usually you leave a little bit so that they're kind of happy in like the way that they, as far as like the people that you're ruling over. These people were particularly nasty, not very nice people. And so this had been going on for a while. And Nahum, it goes to Nineveh. And Nineveh is a town that has been mentioned before. I believe in Jonah as mentioned. So not a great town, center of a lot of bad things that are happening. And so Nahum comes to give him part 2 of the message of kind of, we gave you this warning of if it continues to move in this way, if you continue to murder God's people and exploit God's people and abuse them and do all these different things, God's going to come home and he's going to do what he does a lot of times. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So let's set it up real quick, just with some additional information. So we're going to see who God is revealing himself to be in this book. It's only 3 chapters, which is super cool, super short. It's super short. And so in verse 2, he reveals who he is. Nahum just basically comes out and says it. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The God takes vengeance and is filled with wrath. The Lord takes vengeance on his foes and vents his wrath against his enemies. Now, this is something that's really important. 2 words in the first sentence, jealous and avenging. Are those usually words that we associate with like a loving, kind, good God? No, not usually. Jealous particularly. And it's interesting that words carry the weight that we put on them. They carry the value that we give them. And because this word has been related so negatively with this jealous feeling of negativity and kind of anxiousness and jealousy and stuff like that, or greed, it's interesting that we don't always look at the other definitions. One of the definitions in regarding the word jealous is fiercely protective or vigilant of one's rights, possessions, or people. So in this time, it's really, really interesting. There's a song that we've sung here in Radius called How He Loves Us. And within the first 3 words of that song, it's he is jealous for me. So in that, I want you guys to understand this jealous God is someone who's fiercely protective and vigilant of his people and the ones that he's poured his love out into, the ones that he's chosen, the ones that have chosen him and said, we commit ourselves to you. So in this, that's what jealous means in this context. It's someone who's fiercely vigilant and protective. Second word, avenging. What comes to mind when we hear avenging? Avengers, right? We don't look at the Avengers as like this negative group who's just out kind of like mercenary, like, I want things smashed. And then like they actually have a purpose. They guard the vulnerable. They protect people who are not able to protect themselves. They fight forces of evil. And something that's really fun about this is that the avenging is that this is putting God in a certain light, that God is powerful, that God is not helpless, that he is not withholding when it comes to defending his people and guarding the people, the ones that he loves, is that this puts him in a powerful light. And we need to understand so much that this whole book is about God's power. Even if you go past verse 2 and stuff like that, you can read this on your own. After verse 4, I think 4 through 6 or something like that, is all about how powerful God is. How the clouds are the dust that rise from his feet when he walks through the land. When he walks through the land, hills melt away and mountains shake to the ground. He's so powerful. And that's the God that we have on our side. All right, so let's keep going. Pull this up. Very good. And continue. All right, so this is actually meant to be a message of hope. The whole book of Nahum is supposed to be a message of hope. So when you put yourself in that context, put yourself in the shoes of the people living in Nineveh, the Israelites that have just been conquered, been abused, put into slavery, taxed, possibly killed, imprisoned, all these things. This person is coming to you and saying, listen, don't forget, your God is this. Your God is powerful. Your God is jealous for you. Your God is protective. Your God is coming to right things that are wrong. Hold fast. Don't stop doing the things that you're doing. Don't surrender into this other way of life that God has called us to not be in, but continue being faithful in your actions with God and your relationship with God. Because in that relationship, there's that closeness. There brings that promise of hope. All right, so let's keep going. This whole message of hope, which is super, it's so important to this particular time and how they're kind of moving through things. All right, so just to kind of bring it into like a modern day understanding is what occupies our mind. Back then, it was the Assyrians occupying that land and those people and stuff like that. We don't really have that problem here in the land that we live in as far as occupation. But what other things occupy our mind? Like, is it success or wealth or power? Like you have that drive of just being like, well, I'm in this position, and if I get to that next position, I'll kind of be good, I'll be solid, I'll be able to kind of give God, the time that I'm supposed to give him, or give him the money that I'm supposed to give him, or give him the care and the attention and the reading of his word and building that relationship. Maybe if I get to that one point, I'll be good, and then I won't have to worry about that anymore. That's something that's specifically for me is it's hard to be in a position where I know bills are super tight and then still giving to God. That's so hard for me. And I understand that's really, really hard for a lot of other people. And that's something that can occupy our mind, that we don't trust God enough. We don't say, listen, I'm going to give you my first fruits, which is what God calls of us. He doesn't say, give me what's left over, or give me the crumbs that you have, or if you can dig some change up in the couch or something like that. He calls us to give our first fruits. That means you have to have trust in him, that their ends are going to meet, that you're going to be able to continue moving forward, that he's going to provide for us. All right? Some of the things are work. A lot of times work can really wrap around into our mind, and it invades our mind and our space and our heart, even when we're not at work. Anybody ever have stuff like that? Like you dread going to work, or this memory or this thing at work, and you're just like, God, I can't get that out of my head. It's just me? All right, maybe I'm crazy. That's fine. But work does that. Work invades our minds. It invades our hearts. It takes up our time. It pulls us away from what God would have us do other than focus on this problem or focus on this person or focus on this promotion or focus on this task that we need to get done kind of thing. It robs us of those things. Something else that popped into my head that was a strong kind of note is that past hurts really, really rob us. They occupy our mind. They take up that space, especially hurts from people that are in church. If we're called to bring people into church and to show them God's love, to reveal God's truth, to help share God's wisdom and things like that, so many times past hurts from people at church can fill that void in their mind and just create doubt and dissension and uncertainty and fear and anxiety. All of these things, they occupy our mind. So, what do we do with that? I'll tell you. All right? So after being occupied and things like that, this is something that's really, really awesome that comes in. So verse 3 of Nahum says this: The Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. His way is in the whirlwind and the storm and the clouds and the dust of his feet. So again, reminding us of who is on our side, who has got our back. When we walk into like an ideological fight or kind of a battle, or we get into this place of tension and friction and moving back and forth, who's fighting for us? Who's protecting us? Because I know a lot of us, especially in this time, in this culture, in this place, it feels like not a lot of people are fighting for us. That we're kind of left out on our own, and we have to fend for ourselves and do what we need to do to make sure that we get by. And there's such a disconnection between people, and it's hard for us to be alone in that situation. But Nahum is clearly saying you are not alone. You have someone who is walking with you, someone who has walked before you and won the victory, one who is powerful, one, we sang songs recently, who never changes and who has no rival and no equal. That's who our God is. That's who walks behind you. That's who encourages you. That's who wins that battle before you ever even get to it. Nahum is all about this, about encouraging these people who are being just put under the heel of this empire. Let's go to verse 7. Verse 7 is next, I believe. All right? The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. Something that was interesting in the first verse that we looked at, it said, he's full of wrath and jealousy and all these things. But if we take time to actually understand who that's directed to, is God's enemies. So often in the Old Testament, we see God as like this thunderbolt, lightning, wrath, and raining fire and stuff like that. Who's he throwing it at? It's important to ask that question, because if it's just indiscriminately, just like everybody gets lightning bolts, that's not quite his message. That's not who he is. He's throwing he's directing this rage, this righteous anger at his enemies, not at his people. He loves his people dearly. His people make mistakes, but there's not one time in the Old Testament where there's some kind of reaction or consequence that the people absorb, and then God brings them back into his fold, into his love, into that relationship. He never stops doing that. He constantly seeks us out. Let's keep going. I think it's verse 15 is next. Let's go with that. Verse 15. Look there on the mountains, the feet of the one who brings good news, who proclaims peace. Celebrate your festivals, Judah, and fulfill your vows. No more will the wicked invade you. And this is a promise that God gives us. This is a repeated behavior that you can see throughout the Old Testament, is that God comes, he rescues, he redefines his promise. He makes this promise again and again and again, and he never stops and he never lessens it. He never takes it away. He never minimalizes it or says, well, you kind of stepped out of bounds again this time, so I'm going to withhold a little bit more. He never does that. He's constantly promising again and again and again, you have my love. You have my grace. You have the protection of my power. I'm giving all of you this always. There's that promise, and it's so important to, again, imagine yourself in this space of tyranny and oppression and evil and uncertainty and fear and doubt and possibly death, and to have this one person speak into your life, there is a promise for you. There's a promise of salvation. There's a promise of protection, of redemption, of healing. This is the God that we worship. This is the God that we gather together to speak to and hear from each Sunday. This is the God that emboldens us and empowers us to go to Ecuador, where we don't speak the same language, but we have the love in our heart to bring toothbrushes, to spend time with people, to connect with people, to show love has no boundaries, regardless of location, language, culture, socioeconomic status, any of that. Love does not have that boundary. It floods the world when we're willing to engage with God and love God and speak to God and hear from God. And this is one of these really, really cool moments that we see in like movies that we get goosebumps during, like this moment right now where God's prophet comes and be like, dude, God's coming home. He's going to set stuff straight. It's going to be amazing. And the moments that remind me of this are like in Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings fans? Anybody? Yes? No? Woo! All right. Yes. Nerds. Woo! Just kidding. It's for everybody. So there's a part in the second movie, the Two Towers, all right? The second movie, spectacular. And they're at Helm's Deep. Helm's Deep is this massive castle or massive keep where they have all these walls. It's supposed to be impenetrable, right? And these just giant army of darkness and death and rage are just smashing up against these walls, and they eventually break through. And people inside are getting freaked out. Like people are starting to like shove people down deeper into the caves, into the mountains, being like, run, we don't know what's going to happen. This is super sketchy. It just may go completely the opposite way that we thought. And then at the last moment, light breaks over this massive hill, and this forces of light, the forces of good and of correction and righteousness shower down. They just flow down this mountain and they just annihilate everything that's bad. It's one of those moments where the light peeks out and you say, there is hope and I can see it. I can feel it. It's real. It's tangible. It's not just a story someone tells us. It's not just a prayer that we say. It's not something that we have and that we've kind of learned and memorized. It's so real. Another one that gives me goosebumps even though what I'm thinking about it right now is Narnia. Narnia, anybody? Yeah. First one, and it's so good. So I love lions. Lions are super cool. Big cats in general, really cool. Lions, super awesome. All right? And at the end, Aslan is this character, this essence of good, this essence of power and good and order and things like that. And there's a part in it where, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, it's been like at least 10 years. So go ahead and watch it. It's really, really good. So there's this part where it seems like Aslan is defeated, where the forces of good are defeated. And this evil witch is riding in on a chariot pulled by polar bears. Boss move, by the way. I'm not going to lie. I would want to do that too. So she's riding in with the forces of evil behind her, and she's fighting the forces of good in this massive battlefield. And it seems like all is lost, but then it goes back to this place where Aslan supposedly was defeated, and he is made whole again. He is just as powerful as he was before. He is not limited in any way, and he lets loose this massive roar. And it's like in the movie theaters, it's something else because your insides shake a little bit, and that's awesome to me. It's really cool, but it's just this deep, resonant, raw, powerful roar, which is a statement of my power is made whole now, and I will not withhold it from the people that are hurting the good. That's the same God that we worship. That God of raw and real power that fights fiercely for each and every single one of us and all the struggles that we go through. Even if we can't see it, even if we feel like we're alone, God is fighting so fiercely on our behalf. That's what Nahum is about. Nahum is a reminder that no matter how dark it seems, no matter how disconnected we feel, no matter how incapable we are, our God is fighting for us. Our God is stepping step by step, matching it in sync with us every step of the way. That journey is something that is taken with this person of power, and he empowers us and he emboldens us and he gives us all these different things so that we can share that and give that to other people. That's who this book calls us to be, to remember the power of our God, to remember that he gives that to us, to remember we have the responsibility to carry that out into the world and do what it says in Micah, to seek justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. That's what this whole book is about. That's what I call for each of us to do this week and moving forward, is to understand, especially the man with the Ecuador trip, it's such an awesome thing, is to move out and they are emboldened and empowered and they're going to share that with other people. That's who we're supposed to be. That's who we are. That's who God speaks into us as far as our value and our identity. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for the reminder of who you are. Someone who lifts us up. Someone who is eternally rescuing. Who is constantly moving towards us to build us up, to lift us up, to rescue us, to heal us, and to renew that promise of love, of protection, of grace and forgiveness. God, I pray that we see that we witness that we try and do everything we can to present and reflect that in our lives. That we understand that we serve a God that has no rival, has no equal, is not afraid of anything. You are the living God of light and love and peace and grace and forgiveness and power and potency. You protect us as your own children. I pray that we witness that love each day, that we share that love each day, that we walk out into the world and when people see us and look at us, they understand that there is more, that there is hope, that there is light in the darkness, a light that cannot be extinguished and conquers and casts out all darkness. That is you, God. We pray we carry that, and that we seek that out in the world. in your name and to build your kingdom. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
I want to take a moment as the music plays quietly, because the fact of the matter is we all deal with fear right now. Something in your future, something in your relationships, something with your job. We struggle. We feel like we're going to be overwhelmed. And what I want to do right now is just take a moment for us to bow our heads and close our eyes and to pause. What is it that keeps you up at night? What is the thing that you think if this is going to happen, it's going to be the end of me? I don't know if I can handle this. What is the thing that looks so big, so dangerous in front of you that you don't know how you're going to move through it? And it's easy, man, to go through life and just be quick and try to push that down and not think about it. But there's a moment now to bring this to the Lord and say, God, here is this invading thought, this invading fear, this depression, this darkness that seems to haunt me every day. God, I need you to show up in a big way. I look at myself and I know I cannot. But God, as we saw today, as Brennan spoke, we see that you are a great, powerful God who is jealous for us. And maybe you haven't seen that God. Maybe he seems silent. But I love what Brennan said. Even when you do not feel or discern that he is close, he is moving on your behalf. He is fighting battles for you now. So, as the music plays, I'm going to create some silence. And I want in this moment of silence, I want you just to begin to have a conversation with God. Tell him what you're angry with. Tell him you're hurt. Speak out to him your fear. And then invite his power and his presence into it. As the music plays. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's that sin that you seem to always fall back into. You feel guilt and you feel shame, you feel unworthy. Invite the God of power into that now. Ask him for freedom. Deliverance. Lord, we love you. Thank you as we reminded of who you are, God. In our world and our problems become so big that you seem to be small in comparison. God, help us to realize it is only the perception of reality, not true reality. God, but to realize it's our focus. God, help me to put my focus on you. God, if there's marriages sitting here today who are struggling, who did not sleep in the same room last night, who have a distance among them, God, will you just move in a mighty way in their marriage? God, if people are sitting here today hurt, As Brennan said, people have been hurt by church people. God, begin to move in their life. People who have a diagnosis or a medical thing that just shakes them to their core. God, right now I invite you to move in their life right now and speak your power and your jealous love you have for them, that you will walk beside them. I pray over the individuals who look at their finances and see that the bills are greater than what they think they can bring in. God, I know you are a God that has all the provision, and Lord, I ask, and I've seen it in my life, that you will just walk into those stories, into those families, and speak peace. God, I pray for individuals right now who struggle with addiction, private or public. Just whisper to them you still love them. Whisper to them that through you they can move through this. We can believe and have faith because of what you did on the cross. That you conquered death so that we could have life. And that 3 days later you rose from the grave. God, may we live, may we anchor our belief and trust and faith in that. We're going to sing a song now as we turn the lights back on. Christ is risen. And may it be a song that encourages you, that lifts you up, that gives you the strength you need to move forward from this day. Would you guys stand with me as we sing?
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.